Hey everybody, my name is Sophia Wachtel. I'm an author of books for tweens and teens, and thank you for joining me on my very first YouTube video. This is something I've thought about doing for a while, just haven't gotten around to it, is making videos talking about my writing process, my path to publishing, self-publishing, all the different stuff that I've had to do along the way with editing and cover design and formatting and all of that. And people ask me questions all the time about how did I publish? How did I finish my book? What's kind of the process that I went through? And I thought it'd be nice to be able to make a video so I can maybe point people to it if they're asking me about it. And this is not going to be like a super aesthetic channel. Like you can see, I am in my office with the mattresses and the dirty ceiling, and yeah, my office, we're redoing it right now, and I'm stuck in this little tiny bedroom, but it works and it's fine. And you know what? You don't have to have the perfect everything to be able to write a book. You just need a pen and a paper or a laptop, and isn't that the great thing about writing? Yeah, no barrier to entry. Yeah. So how did I go from an idea in my head to a finished physical book series that I published and am selling? So this first book took me 9 years. 9 years is a very long time. Why did it take me so long the first time? And how did I speed that process up for my other books? At the moment, I'm releasing about a book a year. I work full time, so maybe it'd be faster if I didn't. But that's the reality for most authors, I think, is you've got work, you've got school, you've got kids, you've got life, like other things are going on. You're not just writing all day, every day. Wouldn't that be nice? But no. Okay, so let's jump right into it. I've got a little list of things that worked for me that helped me finish my book. They may not work for everybody, so take it with a grain of salt. Everybody writes differently, everybody processes things differently. But these are the things that worked for me, that helped me, and maybe they'll help some of you guys. So, number one, allow yourself to write a bad book. Sophia, that sounds stupid. Why would I want to write a bad book? I want to write a good book. I want people to love it. I want to be able to publish it and want to have my name on it. I want to feel proud of it. But for me, those thoughts of needing it to be perfect the first time around, that's what stopped me from being able to finish my book in the beginning. I thought that every single word that I wrote down, every single sentence had to be perfect, that once I reached the end of my book, that I would be ready to publish, and that I would publish my first draft. And I didn't even understand the concept of first drafts when I was first starting out. And I don't think I'm alone in that. I think that there are plenty of other writers, because I have talked to other people who are surprised that authors don't just write out the book start to finish and then send it off to their editor to proofread it and then publish it immediately. No, there's steps. So allow yourself to write a bad book. That's your first draft. This is my first draft of my first book, Kingdom of Feather and Sky. I didn't know how to make a fun little cover, so I got the generic stock photo oranges. I don't know. It just came with it when I printed it. So this is so fun to read through my rough draft, my very first draft of my book, because this is not at all the same book as this is. This is my first draft. This is my final draft. They are so different. My main character, her name was different for my first draft. I think her name was different until my second to last draft. I finally changed her name because it just didn't fit. I didn't like it. Her name was Nadia in this, which I like that name, but then we went with Kyra for the end, and I felt like that fit better. I've got a character in here that if you read through, you'd be like, who the heck is this? There was a bad guy that I started writing, and I got halfway through and I realized he doesn't fit in this story. So he's not in there for the rest of it, and he's not in my final book. There's a character in here who I was going to make an antagonist, but I ended up really liking him as I kept writing him, and he ends up being a love interest in a future book. So it is just so fun for me to go back and see how much has changed from this book to this book. And the fact that I let this be a bad book, nobody wants to read this. You would read this and you would be so confused. I'm confused when I read it. I'm like, what was I thinking? But getting the idea on paper was the first step and the most important step to be able to finish a book and publish a book. So let yourself write a bad book so that you can edit it and do future drafts and eventually end up with a book that you're happy with. The second tip for finishing a book would be stop world building and start writing. And I think that one can be a little bit controversial, but that really, really helped me when I stopped procrastinating, because I think that's often what world building can be, is it's a distraction. It's a procrastination. It's really fun to make a bunch of Pinterest boards about, what does my country look like? Maybe making maps of it. Maybe making character sheets. What is their favorite food? Where did they go on vacation? When is their birthday? But if it's not important to your story, if it's not relevant to your story, at least for me, I don't think it matters. I have this full notebook of information about my book for the first one that I wrote, and there is some important things. I have a little map in there. Oh, it's so bad. And that just helps me, like, if I'm writing and I'm trying to think of where are they going, which direction are they going, being able to look at my map, that's important to me. So I think there are world building things that can be important, but like, I don't know, you go onto Pinterest and it'll be like, write down what season is your character, or if your character was a color, what color would they be? Me personally, I don't think it matters. I don't think it matters at all if your character is winter or if they're summer, because you know what, while you're writing all that down, while you're trying to figure that out, while you're taking all these quizzes about what is your character like, you're not writing and you're not getting closer to finishing your book. So while I think world building can be important and it can be needed, I think it can be a distraction, and I think it can be a way to put off writing and to maybe never finish your book because you're just stuck in this like create mode of trying to make your world absolutely perfect. And maybe it doesn't really matter what type of nails they used on this building specifically, or what kind of what kind of stone is the floor of this church. Like, if it's not important to the story, at least me personally, I don't think it matters that much. My third tip is actually the one that like really was the reason I think that I finished my book. And it is, do not edit before you reach the end of draft 1, your first draft. Don't edit. Because 9 years it took me to write my first book, and you know what 9 of those years were spent doing? 8 of those years were spent doing was going over like 7 scenes. I think in 8 years I probably wrote like, it was just a couple chapters. It was like maybe 10 scenes. And what I would do is I loved these scenes and I thought they had to be perfect. And so when I opened up my computer to do my writing, I would go to my scenes and I would read through them and I'd say, well, this word doesn't fit. Let's switch this around. Let's mix this up a little bit. Maybe you'll rewrite this sentence. And I would just read through what I had already written, and I would edit it and I would edit it and I would edit it because I thought it had to be perfect the first time around, which again, that's back to step 1. Let yourself write a bad book. So don't edit before the end of the first draft, because that is, again, like step 2, that's a reason to procrastinate. It's keeping you from finishing your book. If you're reading your book and you're editing your book, you're not getting to the end of the story. So for the first draft, at least, write till the end. Do not worry if your sentences aren't perfect. Don't worry if your dialogue sounds a little bit stilted. Don't worry if maybe you didn't have the exact perfect description for this scene. Just write yourself a little bit of a note there, move on. Get to the end of the book. It doesn't have to be perfect. My next tip goes a little bit hand in hand with the last one of not editing until you're done with your first draft. And that is, if you're stuck on a scene, move on. And what I mean by that is, if maybe your characters are at a castle here and you wrote this scene and you know that in a chapter you want them to be at this lake and they need to be meeting someone here, but you can't quite figure out how are they getting from the castle to the lake, what's going on in between there. Maybe you know that certain things need to happen, certain scenes need to happen, but you can't quite get yourself to write them. Move on, skip that chapter. Maybe write yourself a little note that says, oh, I want them to travel by horse. I want them to be doing this. I want this specific conversation to happen in this scene. But just leave it alone. Come back to it later. Move on to the next scene. Write something else. Give yourself a break. If it's too hard to write a scene, just move on. So those are my tips. And you may notice a lot of them have to deal with writing that first draft, that initial getting the words on the page, getting from the beginning to the end. And honestly, like I've said that my book took 9 years to write. 8 years and 8 months of those were writing the first draft. Once I got to the end, once I said the end on this first draft, it was about 4 months until my book was published. And that was writing, 6 more drafts? From that, editing, sending it off to an editor, getting all that done, cover, formatting, publishing it. So the hard part for me, and I think the hard part for a lot of people, is just putting the words on the page to begin with. That's the hard part. So once you can get past that, you're golden. So again, allow yourself to write a bad first draft. Stop world building, start writing. Don't edit before the end of your first draft. And if you're stuck on a scene, it's okay to move on. So I hope you guys liked some of these tips. If they're tips that you have that have helped you finish your book, let me know down below. I'd really be interested. And stick around. I'm hoping to add some more videos as we go. I don't know if I'll do once a week, if we'll do once a month. We'll see. But yeah, thanks for watching. Bye.